Hello and welcome to today's Q&A. You decide who decides. My name is Brett Osmond and I'm the editor of Compass. I'm coming to you from Sydney on Gadigal land and I pay my respects to elders past and present. And welcome all of you here today for what should be a terrific conversation. We have as our special guest today Simone Reid, who is from Tasmania Legal Aid. Welcome, Simone, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Now, we've been running these Q&As throughout the last week or two. We're doing one in each state and territory. So today it's all about Tasmania and what an enduring power of attorney means in Tasmania, how you go about creating one, and lots more. You decide who decides is the name of this series, and it comes from a terrific guide that is available on Compass. You will be sent a link to it after today's session, and it is essentially a guide on making an enduring power of attorney. A new edition was published just in the last week, and it comes to us from the Australian Guardianship and Administration Council. So I've got one last piece of housekeeping, and that is for everyone joining us today, it is a Q&A. We're very keen to hear your questions. We'll be using the chat today, so direct any of your questions to us, and we will go to them, answer them to the best of our ability, and if not, we will come back to you after the event. So I'm going to start while people are getting their questions together, Simone, and ask you, I guess, the most obvious question. What is an enduring power of attorney for financial decisions?
An enduring power of attorney document is a document that you appoint an attorney to manage your legal and financial affairs in the event that you lose capacity. To be legally valid in Tasmania, it does need to be registered at the Land Titles Office.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting requirement. I know in other states and territories, you do have to register it if you're going to be dealing with selling real estate. But in Tasmania, it has to be registered, all of them, to be a valid document. That's really interesting. Has that always been the case?
Yes, as far as I know, that's always
Yeah.
been the case. So, regardless of whether you own real estate or not, the document does need to be registered to be
Right.
legally.
And how does an enduring power of attorney differ from a will?
So, an enduring power of attorney is a legal document that's effective only during your lifetime. It ceases to have legal effect once you pass away, whereas a will only becomes legally binding once you pass away, and it appoints an executor to pay your debts and distribute your estate.
Yeah. So, what are the main reasons or motivations that people might have to make an enduring power of attorney?
I think there are certain points in your life where you might consider making an enduring power of attorney. I don't think there's any particular trigger, but usually it's where you think about who you want and is the most appropriate person for you to manage your legal and financial affairs if you lose capacity. So that means you could have an illness, you could have an accident or something that means that you can no longer make those decisions for yourself. So it gives you the choice about who you trust and who is the most appropriate person to manage your affairs if you can't do that for yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. And I guess you've introduced this concept too of capacity, a person's ability to make their own decisions. How is capacity determined and who decides if you've lost it?
Usually, a medical practitioner would certify that you've lost capacity, or you get a report from a geriatrician or psychologist. In some circumstances, if there is a dispute around capacity, that can be determined by TASCAT or the Supreme Court.
Right. And is losing capacity always a permanent thing or can it be temporary?
It certainly can be temporary. People can lose capacity when they have an illness and then regain it. And it can also mean that you might have capacity to make certain decisions, such as paying your bills, that type of thing, but you may not have capacity for complex business transactions. So it's a really difficult concept.
Yeah. And I'm very aware that my own capacity, somebody who, for all intents and purposes does have capacity can vary throughout the day. So I guess the idea then that you might have an enduring power of attorney introduces this other concept of supported decision making as well. So it's not something, is it, that you're handing over complete decision making to somebody else. Your attorney under an enduring power of attorney really should be supporting you to make the decisions that you want to make. Is that right? Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. So your attorney is meant to, regardless of what your capacity is meant to explain the decision that needs to be made in plain English and in sort of terms that you understand, to give you the opportunity to consider that information. And if you're able to, is to contribute what your views are on that. Just because your attorney doesn't think it's a good idea doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision to make. So they
Yeah.
do be mindful of the wishes of the donor.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a terrific article on Compass. And when I talk about Compass, I'm referring to compass.info. It's Australia's national information hub on elder abuse. It has been created to help people better understand elder abuse, also to reduce and respond to it. And as such, it has a terrific section on enduring powers of attorney, and articles you'll find there include one on substitute decision making, which is a really interesting area, one that's gaining more ground. This idea of substitute decision making and then as opposed to supportive decision making, particularly interesting for people who may have a cognitive condition, such as dementia. And so I highly recommend compass.info and that particular resource. So when you're thinking about creating an enduring power of attorney, Simone, I mean, I guess the obvious thing is thinking about who to choose to be your attorney. And what are some typical choices that people make with regards to that appointment?
I think in my experience, most people tend to look for close family members or, close family friends. But I do have to say they're not always the appropriate person to
Right.
appoint.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's
Who
sometimes,
makes a good attorney?
well, I think someone who knows you, knows your decision, understands your assets, and knows what your wishes are. Someone, I mean, you're granting them a very broad power, so it's someone that you need to trust implicitly. And so you need to make sure that they are not in any financial difficulty themselves or have gambling or drinking addictions as well. So, um, you've also got to remember that you can revoke that if circumstances change at any time
Yes.
while you have capacity.
Right. We'll get on to revoking, but just staying on choosing the right person for a moment. We've had some questions in the previous Q&As about whether that person needs to live locally to you. Some people have, appointed an attorney, could be their adult child who has subsequently moved overseas. Is there an advantage to having your attorney close by?
I certainly think there is a definite advantage to having an attorney close by so they can, help you with your affairs locally. But it's not fatal to have attorneys who reside overseas. It just makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah. And in Tasmania, can you have more than one attorney? Can you appoint multiple attorneys?
Yes, you can appoint up to 3 attorneys in Tasmania,
Right.
and they can be appointed jointly or jointly and severally.
Yeah. And severally means they can just make decisions independent of each other, isn't it? And jointly, they have to agree.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there advantages to having more than one attorney, do you think?
Yes, I definitely think there's an advantage to having more than one. It's a check and balance so that, if funds are going astray, there is, another person looking over and has access to those bank accounts. So I think that's a definite advantage to have joint and several
Yeah.
attorneys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I guess another another thing, coming back to this idea of trust, which you introduced. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that is the sort of best advice that we can give people, isn't it? That they choose someone that they can trust, uh, particularly because you know, if some things do go wrong, as you know, people have reported with powers of attorney, it can be quite difficult to remedy quickly. So your best insurance is choosing someone, I guess, that you trust with making decisions that you want to make, not deciding for themselves what's best for you.
That's right. You can put checks and balances in the instrument itself. So there might be limitations on what assets they can deal with, but you also need to be mindful that you do need to get advice around that because there could be some unintended consequences. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you're trusting someone with your assets and your so you need to make sure that they'll do the right thing by you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Now, getting on to the situation where you don't have an enduring power of attorney and you lose capacity, what happens to you then? Who's going to make your decisions for you?
Well, initially, no one can just step in and manage your finances for you. It would be necessary for a family member or a friend to apply to TASCAT um, for an appointment of a financial administrator.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the tribunal then decides who is appointed, and it may not be who you would choose. And they could determine that there's no one appropriate to appoint and then appoint the public trustee as your
Right.
finance minister.
Yeah. So I think that is potentially a common misconception that people have is just that their partner or their children will be able to just automatically step in. But that's not the case, is it?
No, no, you actually have to get an order
Yeah.
someone as your attorney. Yes.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the ability to revoke an enduring power of attorney. And essentially that just means you can cancel it and create a new one. Is that easy to do in Tasmania, and how do you go about that?
Yeah, so it is a process due to the powers of attorney to be legally effective are registered. So
Mhm.
you need to sign a declaration of severance of joint tenancy and register it, and also send notice of that severance to the attorneys who were previously appointed.
Right, right. And I guess that also brings up this other idea of how often should you review your enduring power of attorney because things change, relationships change, your circumstances might change, your wishes might change. So, what advice would you give people about reviewing? Because it's a document that could stay around for a very long time, and so could easily get out of date.
Yeah, I recommend to clients that they review all of their estate planning documents every couple of years.
Yep.
Just to make sure, just to even look at the family relationships to make sure that, there's not going to be trouble or someone's circumstances might have changed, including your own.
Yes, yes. So when you create the enduring power of attorney in Tasmania and you register it, uh, and so revoking it, you've sort of gone through. Is there a cost to registering the enduring power of attorney in Tasmania?
Yes, there's a registration fee of roughly $178 to register an
Yep.
injury attorney, and there's also a revocation fee of roughly $140.
Right. Okay. So there are some costs associated with doing that. Now, when you've created your enduring power of attorney, you register it, as you said, in Tasmania. Do you also advise giving copies to, close family and friends in addition to the attorneys? Or should you keep the document fairly close to your chest? What's your advice to people?
Um, So it depends entirely on the circumstances, really. So if the document is registered, I would recommend that you give a copy to your attorneys, and certainly let people know where the original is kept.
Yep.
People keep them either with their solicitor or in a fireproof safe in their home, that type of thing. I wouldn't recommend, if you're not in the enduring phase, I wouldn't recommend distributing it too broadly.
Right. And how do you go about actually making one in Tasmania? Is there a form, or, is there a cost-effective way, or should people really consult independent legal and financial advice?
I always recommend that people get independent legal and financial advice, and to make sure that they understand the document and the implications of it. But the form is readily available. It's available on the Tasmanian Legal Aid website. It's also available on the Land Titles Office website, which you can download and prepare and lodge yourself if you choose to do so.
Right. Thank you. Now, one of the things that we were chatting about before we started was how the fact that enduring powers of attorney documents, it's a legal document, differ in different states and territories around Australia. So in Tasmania, it's the same here in New South Wales. It's just for financial decisions. But we just wanted to highlight to people that that's not the case in some other states and territories. If you've created an enduring power of attorney in Tasmania, but then you move to another part of the country, or you've got attorneys that live in different parts of the country, does that have any impact? Or is that anything that people should be considering or having to deal with? Are there any issues that pop up?
Yes, if you move to another state and you've got a registered enduring power of attorney, I would recommend that you get advice from a legal practitioner in the state that you move to.
Mhm.
Depending on what state it is, you may need to register the Tasmanian power of attorney in that state, or you may need to actually do a new power of attorney that complies with that state's legislation.
Great. Now, say we have somebody who lives in Tasmania, but they own real estate in another part of Australia. Uh, Do they have to have their enduring power registered in the state in which they own real estate if their attorney needs to sell that after they've lost capacity?
Yes, they do. They would need to have it registered. I believe in most states, they have a requirement for registration to deal with real estate.
Right, so that's a really important thing for people to consider if their assets are in different parts of the country. The enduring power of attorney needs to be registered in those jurisdictions. That's a really interesting one. Thank you. So just now turning our attention to attorneys. We've spoken about what makes a good attorney, what makes a bad attorney, and who you should choose: someone you trust, someone who knows you very well, somebody who potentially lives close to you. But how do attorneys learn about the role itself and how to be a good attorney? I mean, it doesn't come with a training course, but I know there are handbooks available. But what's the best advice you could give to somebody who's thinking about taking on this role or has taken on the role and might be struggling with knowing exactly what to do?
Yeah, there are lots of resources available for attorneys. And in Tasmania, we've got a really good power of attorney handbook for attorneys that's on our Tasmania Legal Aid website. And I understand you've got some resources on yours as well, Brett.
Yeah, we've got your resources along with lots of other people. So once again, a plug for Compass, compass.info, and go to our Enduring Powers of Attorney section. We've got articles on what is an enduring power of attorney, how to be an attorney, what makes a good attorney, and also articles on conflicts of interest and things to think about. So that's my next question to you, Simone, is there can be, how do people identify and deal with potential conflicts of interest?
Well, I think under the Power of Attorney Act, an attorney is required to act in the best interests of the donor at all times. So that means if you are using an attorney's money for your own benefit, for your own investments, that's a big no.
That's a big no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And does the handbook your handbook outline what are some typical conflicts of interest?
Yes, it does.
Right. So that's really helpful for people. Another question that I had to ask is, do you have to notify when you've chosen an attorney? Do they have to agree to the appointment of being your attorney, or is it something that you can just write down and they learn about after you've lost capacity?
No, to be appointed as an attorney in Tasmania, you do need to sign the instrument
Yep.
um, as as an acceptance.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to accept the role.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. So when you have created an enduring power of attorney, we know we get a lot of questions here at Compass about the potential for that document to be misused and abused. And I guess I wanted to talk to you a little bit about common misuse scenarios because the role of attorney doesn't come with a guidebook, people might inadvertently make mistakes. So, what are some of the things that attorneys need to consider so that they don't inadvertently misuse the power?
I think sometimes there's a little lack of understanding about what it means to be an attorney, and really the guiding light is that it is the donor's assets, it's not yours. So
Except yours.
you must keep separate bank accounts. You can't mix their money in with yours. You need to keep separate accounts, receipts, that type of thing. There is no real oversight of the operation of powers of attorney in but TASCAT can order records be produced if it does come up for review and there is an allegation that funds have been misappropriated.
So I just wanted to highlight to everyone, by all means, jump in and ask us a question. We're really happy to have you all joining us today. So we're using the chat. So by all means, put your questions to us. My next question to you, Simone, is who can raise concerns with TASCAT that abuse might be occurring?
Anybody who's concerned that there is abuse occurring can apply to TASCAT under the guardianship stream for a review.
Right. Okay. And that can be, anything from they think that there's money being siphoned off the account or things aren't, or neglect can sometimes be an indication that things are not as they should be.
Oh, and assets being sold. It's not where's the money gone, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can the you've lost capacity and enduring power of attorney is, in place. TASCAT receives an allegation that things are not looking as they should be. Can they remove the attorney and take action in that respect?
Yes, they can. They can remove that attorney and they can also appoint a new attorney.
Right. Okay. And so essentially, they are the sole kind of adjudicator on that.
They are, but there's also the potential for appeals to the Supreme Court.
Right, right. So the remedies are, in a sense, TASCAT is the first port of call. Otherwise, the Supreme Court does sound like a fairly daunting process for people. I guess that comes back to this idea of choosing someone that you trust. You mentioned earlier that you can put some sort of limitations and instructions into your enduring power of attorney. I know one of the things mentioned in the You Decide Who Decides guide is that you could have your own accountant audit the books, if you will, every year. Obviously, there would be a fee associated with that, but a lot of people probably aren't aware that you can put those sorts of instructions in place.
That's right. And you can also include conditions, for particular types of transactions, for example, selling the selling of real estate, that you need to get the approval of that independent accountant prior to that power, the attorney having the power to effect that sale.
Right, right. Okay, that's really interesting. So in Tasmania, we've talked about finding a lawyer and financial advice. How do you find a lawyer in Tasmania?
We frequently give referrals. The Law Society has a list of commercial or estate planning lawyers. That would be the first place that I would recommend people look.
Yeah. And are there other enduring powers in Tasmania?
There are enduring guardian documents, and that's where you appoint a guardian to make lifestyle and medical decisions in the event that you lose capacity.
Yeah. So coming back to this idea of trust, sometimes people ask us, there isn't anybody in my life that I know of that I can appoint. So if you find yourself in that situation where you don't have somebody in your life that you would trust with an enduring power of attorney, I guess the first piece of advice would be don't give it to someone you don't trust. But what are your options?
Well, you always have the option of not having an enduring power of attorney at
Right.
all. That would be the starting point. They only come into play if you lose capacity, and so that in that way you maintain control of your assets and control of your life. Um, but there are sort of professional trustee companies. There's a public trustee you could appoint, or professional trustee companies, or private lawyers, that type of thing. But they obviously they do come at a professional fees will apply.
Yeah. Now, I just in the last few years created an enduring power of attorney, but really anybody over the age of 18, any adult can have one, can't they?
Yes, any adult with capacity.
With capacity. Now, once you have lost capacity, are you able to make an enduring power of attorney then or change it in any way?
No, you can't, unfortunately. Yeah, once you've lost capacity, you lose that ability to make one or revoke an existing one.
So it really is something that, it's about advanced planning, future planning, getting
It,
these documents in place.
and the best time to do that is when you're fit, you're healthy, and you're able to make clear decisions yourself.
Yeah, yeah. There's a terrific video too, I would highly recommend that's on the Public Guardian website in Queensland about capacity. Compass also has a really good section on having capacity, understanding capacity, and also links to that video. I was very surprised, and it was a really sobering video to watch because you normally think of dementia or Alzheimer's or a condition like that that might remove your capacity. But it could be a car accident or another illness that robs you of your capacity at any stage of your life. So it isn't just a document, is it, for people over the age of 65?
No, no, it's not. No, and that's, there are certain points in your life where people might consider doing a power of attorney. Any change, any major change in your life is probably a good time to consider it, whether that be at your retirement, before you have major surgery, or you're going overseas for an extended period of time. Um, they're all good times to think about whether you need to appoint someone to manage your affairs.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you know? Uh, so getting back to this question of an enduring power of attorney and you don't necessarily want one, can you take it into your own role to contact TASCAT to appoint a public advocate, or be, as your attorney?
If you wanted to appoint like the public trustee to manage your finances, you would approach them in the first instance, and they would prepare that document for you.
Yeah. So you mentioned an enduring guardian being another enduring document in Tasmania. So an enduring power of attorney is just for financial and legal, and the guardian is for health and lifestyle. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
they're really kind of two documents you would probably do at the same time.
Usually, but I suppose the person who you choose as your guardian isn't necessarily the same person you would choose to manage your financial affairs. So
Right.
they be separate appointments.
Yes, I guess you might choose somebody who has good financial acumen, who you trust to do all of those legal and financial matters, and that could have quite a different set of skills.
Yes, and yeah, a guardian might be someone who you want to be able to advocate for you in a hospital setting, for example, and that might not necessarily be that's a different skill set to someone who's managing your finances.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in your work with the Senior Assist program in Tasmania, what are some of the questions you often get asked about enduring powers of attorney that we haven't chatted about yet today?
Uh, so the most common queries we have is around disputes amongst family members
Hmm.
and allegations that the attorney's not making the right financial decisions.
Hmm.
Um, we see that all the time, and just a lack of sometimes it comes down to just a lack of understanding about what the role of an attorney is.
Yeah, yeah. So if you've appointed two attorneys and they have to make decisions jointly and they can't agree, that there is an impasse, um, what happens then? How do those sorts of conflicts get resolved?
Uh, there is the opportunity to go to have that dispute resolved by TASCAT, but there is also a mediation service through the Office of Public Guardian that offers mediation in those circumstances. And you could also potentially access other mediation services.
Hmm. Um, in the event that one of your attorneys decides to resign from the role, both do, or you've just got one and they do, what happens then if your attorney, themselves loses capacity or decides that they just can't, they don't have the ability anymore to act on your behalf?
Might have to take that question on notice, Brett. It is my understanding that if it's a joint appointment, and if one of those attorneys revokes that or lacks capacity, it's necessary to do a new power of attorney that
Right.
ceases to have legal effect.
Yeah, right.
That, yeah,
Interesting question. Now, one of the things, just sort of going back to who to choose as an attorney, often people choose their partners or their friends. But I'm a person who is approaching 60. And so those people are my age and if not older. So as a backup in my enduring power of attorney, I have my much younger niece who is only in her 20s. Is that a good idea for people to think about that kind of generational long-term planning with a document like this?
absolutely. So you can have a substitute attorney, and that would get around the problem that we just talked about is that someone else can substitute into that role.
Yes. And they just have to be written up and in the document before you lose capacity. Is that right?
Yes, that substitute appointment is in the document itself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and hopefully, yeah, that's a good bit of insurance. Because I know a lot of people do choose their peers. So it's probably a good idea to think about that long-term planning because a document like this can be in place for several decades before it might actually come into effect. So it's a very powerful document, and one that as you mentioned, if you don't have it, then you lose control, really, isn't it? I guess that's the thing people weigh up, that if TASCAT gets involved, essentially, then you've lost control of the decisions that you might want to make for your.
That's, yes, you lose that the choice.
Yeah. And how much detail can you put into an enduring power of attorney? I mean, this might sound really glib, but I've even put the type of things that I want to wear. There's a particular brand of sneakers that I like, and so it might sound like a really silly example, but I literally do have them in my, and that comes down to, I guess, your attorneys knowing you very well. But somebody might say, "Oh, well, that's ridiculous. Those sneakers are too expensive. You don't really need them. You're not doing much walking anymore." But you can get quite granular, can't you?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who put in, she wants to have her hair done every week.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So those sorts of things. Um, but but there's a balance, I would imagine. You don't want to be too prescriptive because you don't necessarily, life has a wonderful way of being quite unpredictable. So I guess you don't want to limit the powers of your attorney too much. Would you advise?
I think you need to get professional advice around that.
Yep.
You know, you might put in a limitation on selling the family home, for example, but it may well be that you get to a point in your life where you do need that cash.
Yes.
And so there may be some unintended consequences that you really do need to consider.
Yeah, yeah. So independent legal advice is definitely something to suggest. Now, I also just want to give another plug to Compass in that we've got lots of different articles too, and a completely dedicated section for Tasmania. So there's a checklist on how to make an enduring power of attorney with links to TASCAT and all the requisite forms that are required. We've also got articles on particular communities and how enduring powers of attorney might relate to them, particularly the LGBTQI plus community, the culturally and linguistically diverse community. Are there services for people who, don't have English as their primary language to assist them in creating an enduring power of attorney?
Uh, there is a migrant resource centre in Tasmania that they have services, they arrange services.
Right. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, well, we're not getting any questions from our Tasmanian people today. So I think we've covered a lot. We've talked about attorneys, what the document does, how to be a good attorney, capacity, how you make one, revoke one. It's a very important document. I know only about 50% of older Australians have one in place. On balance, would you say it's advisable to have an enduring power of attorney, or is it purely a personal decision?
I think it depends entirely on your personal circumstances. I look at it as having an insurance policy,
Yeah,
and it means that you have the ability to then have a say in your future when you can't have that voice yourself.
great. So we do have a few questions here. I'm going to jump to them. We've got one from Jackie Howard. Is there a specific form or document that you need to complete in Tasmania?
Yes, there is. That form is available on the Land Titles Office website, and it's also available on the Tasmania Legal Aid website.
Which I think would probably answer Lynette O'Grady's question, which is Lynette says that she lives in a remote area. So these forms and this information can all be accessed online.
That's correct.
So hoping, Lynn, that by virtue of you joining us today, you're able to join and access information online. And
We also have a legal helpline at Tasmania Legal Aid, which is a free service that people can call up
right.
if they need assistance in completing the document.
So if you do live remotely, can you lodge or register your enduring power of attorney online?
Uh, I believe you can't, but you can send it by the old snail mail. There
Right.
is an address that they
You
can.
can send that to the land titles office.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So Lynette, yes, you will have to post that one in. Don asks if there are two attorneys, one your wife and one your son, Can you appoint them to act in order, wife first, and then if she isn't available, then your son? That's a very interesting question.
Um, so yeah, it depends. So you can appoint them jointly and severally, so they can both make decisions. I haven't seen a document where it specified the order of the pecking order, but
Yeah.
you could also so that you appoint your wife as your attorney and then your son as the substitute.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, in that sense, the wife would be the primary supportive decision maker until time when the son steps in. So son being a substitute. Um, yes, so Julie Fullerton, chat is disabled. That is interesting. So it looks like we are using the Q&A. I apologize for that. Um, so I will look at that. But thank you for everyone for highlighting that. So we are using the Q&A. Do you need both an attorney and a guardian, one for finance and one for health? I think yes, we've answered that. And the answer, Julie, is yes. Sue asks, can a residential aged care facility apply to be an enduring power of attorney if the person is residing in a facility and suddenly loses capacity? So yes, can an aged care facility apply to be your attorney?
They could apply to, it depends on the question of capacity, but it's not, the aged care facility is not a person. So no,
Yes.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. So no, they're not really able to do that. It has to be an individual.
that's correct. They could apply for a review to TASCAT if they were concerned, or if someone needed an administrator appointed by the tribunal, but the appointment is to an individual or to a trustee company. It's not to
Yeah.
care facility.
Yeah. And even an employee within an aged care facility, I would imagine there's a conflict of interest there. Yeah. So that would raise some concerns. Um, an interesting one from Julie, and we talked about capacity and there being a test. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll try and remember the test is that you can understand the decision that you're making. You can weigh up the pros and cons of that decision. You can, and then communicate the decision. It doesn't have to be verbally, does it?
No, it doesn't have to be verbally, but yes, you're correct with the process.
So, how do you prove that you have capacity? Because I know that there have been some case studies that have come across Compass where people have claimed that their older relative, their father, their mother, doesn't have capacity. Um, but how do you actually prove you do have it? Do you need to see a psychiatrist? Julie is asking.
Well, there is all the starting point is there is a presumption of capacity. You have to prove someone has to prove that you don't have it, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, someone has to prove you don't have it.
Yeah.
If it has been decided that you don't have capacity, can you prove that you have regained it back?
Yes, you can, as you said, get a report from a psychiatrist or a geriatrician or your GP. Um, and capacity can fluctuate. That's the thing. You could lose it while you have an illness, and then you could regain it when you get better.
Yeah, yeah. So Eric asked the question, but Jan has jumped in. TASCAT is actually the Tasmanian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. You will find links to TASCAT on Compass. In the Enduring Powers of a section, click on Tasmania, and there is lots of information there. Eric asked the question, can a power of attorney act as director of a company in your stead?
The company can appoint the directors can appoint someone to act as a power of attorney of the company. Yes,
Right, right. Okay. And Michelle asks, when the aged care see attorneys not doing an adequate role caring for the person, it's only TASCAT that they can contact, isn't it?
that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from contacting other members of the family.
If there's an allegation of elder abuse or financial elder abuse, there are many services available to get advice from. There is the Elder Abuse Helpline, there is us, Senior Assist, and there's also the Council of the Ageing.
Yeah, wonderful. So I do apologize that the chat wasn't working as it should, but I'm really pleased that everyone has put their questions forward on the Q&A and that we've been able to get to them. Um, Eric has asked, can you appoint powers of attorney to act individually so that one can do the work and the others can check? I guess the answer to that is we've already discussed is yes, you can ask them to act severally. Can you give them separate roles like that, though, where one makes the decisions and the other one is checking? Or is it really something that they're both attorneys, then they both have the same ability to make decisions?
That's my understanding of
Yep.
the Act, yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now, Kim has mentioned that there is the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. But I would assume their remit is to look at aged care facilities, not necessarily the role of an attorney, potentially misusing that power.
Yeah, under the Act, Power of Attorney Act, it's TASCAT that does reviews.
Yep, yep, wonderful. Um, Jan asks, if you are the sole director of a company, can the attorney act for you in that case?
No,
No,
no.
right. No.
It's the company that appoints the attorney, not
Yep.
the individual.
So if you're the sole director of a company, how would that happen? I guess you have to seek legal advice there because unless it's explicitly outlined in the document, that one I think yes, you might need to go and consult individual legal advice. Good question. Um, Julie Fullerton asks, my experience of an elder abuse issue with a family member in Queensland, QCAT made decisions but didn't have any teeth. That is, they didn't have the power or capacity to make the attorneys behave appropriately. Is TASCAT the same, or is that a situation? What powers? I mean, that does sound like you've described to us today that TASCAT does have quite a few powers.
Yeah, I can't comment on individual.
Individual case, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, TASCAT certainly has the ability to remove an attorney and appoint new financial administrators in their place if they make a determination that there has been a breach of the Power of Attorney Act by the attorney.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we also have mentioned, though, Julie, that in the case of potentially, say, real estate being sold, that you didn't want sold, that may need to go to the Supreme Court. So some of the remedies available are potentially time consuming and might require a bit of money. So choosing someone that you trust, I guess, is once again the default place to start. Because whilst some abuse does take place, TASCAT does have powers. That is probably one of your best insurances. So, in most instances, would you say attorneys act in goodwill and in good faith, and enduring powers of attorney do operate as they should? Is that your experience as someone from Tasmania Legal Aid, or is that too hard to really know?
Yeah, I couldn't really comment
No.
on that, Brett. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Samsung has asked a question. I missed the beginning. Does your next of kin have power to deal with your financial matters if you don't have an enduring power of attorney in place? And we answered that one, said no. If you've lost capacity, you will need an enduring power of attorney. However, it does raise the issue of what's the difference between an enduring power of attorney and a regular power of attorney.
So a regular power of attorney is where you appoint someone to manage your legal and financial affairs, but it ceases. It might be for a finite period of time, or it ceases once you enter into that enduring phase. So when you lose decision-making capacity.
Yeah. So I guess a general power of attorney is something that people put in place if they go overseas for an extended period of time, or they might have a temporary illness, and they can put it in. Yeah. Jan asks a really interesting question. If your attorneys, so are acting severally so they can make decisions independently of each other, um, what happens if they disagree?
Well, they need to apply if they can't if they can't agree. The only solution they have is to apply to TASCAT and have the tribunal decide for them.
Yeah. But when the attorney's acting severally, they don't have to make, do they have to agree on decisions? No, not
No.
necessarily. So it could run for a while, but I would imagine if one of the attorneys was not comfortable with the decisions being made, then TASCAT is the port of call. Um, Simone, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been such a fantastic conversation. Now, I'm just going to say we're getting close to the end of today's Q&A. If there are any other questions, please put them into the Q&A. Otherwise, I just wanted to say a big thank you, Simone, for joining us. A copy, recording, I should say, of today's Q&A will be available and emailed to everybody who registered, along with a transcript of the questions today that were asked. It will also come to you with a link to the You Decide Who Decides guidebook and some introductory videos, along with links to some of the sections on Compass that I talked about. So thank you to everyone who did put a question forward. I'm glad that we were able to get to them. It's been terrific to be able to have your expertise in discussing this really important document. So Simone, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone. Have an enjoyable rest of your afternoon. And if you know of somebody that would like to join our Q&As in Northern Territory, Western Australia, South Australia, by all means, jump onto compass.info and they can register there. Thank you very much. I just also wanted to highlight that if anybody is experiencing abuse in any form, then Compass is a terrific resource. There are services in our service directory and hundreds of resources available. And you can also access the National Elder Abuse Helpline on 1800 353 374. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon.